Hey, friends. I sent my song out today, which means I can probably share it with you soon. I'm letting it make the rounds a little. But it felt really good. It felt really good to kind of decide. Of course, right at the end, I did a little bit of over editing, like just kind of like really getting micro about the last couple of details. And I sort of gave myself permission to do that 3 or 4 times. And then eventually I said, okay, and that's enough. Now, no more futzing. Let it go. And I just got off a call with, um, in some ways, one of the primary intended recipients, the woman who was married to Alan. And she loved it. All good news. And she asked me at some point, she said, well, what are you doing? What are you doing for yourself these days? What are you doing to keep yourself healthy and happy? And I didn't have the wherewithal to say this, but what I thought almost immediately after we got off the call was the thing I've been doing to keep myself healthy and happy is this song. This work keeps me healthy and happy. And it reminded me of a conversation that I had with somebody who I can't call a friend because I've only had a handful of conversations with them, but somebody who was definitely a kindred spirit who talked to me about a possible leadership training that's coming up, and we just chatted about how we see creative work fitting into our lives. And one of the things he said was, creative work is a wellness practice for me. He said, and he sort of like was implicating me. It was like, for people like us, wellness has a creative component. And I thought, that's so smart. That's such a good way to think about it. Because whether or not we make our living off of creative work, whether or not the art we do is what sustains us financially, it is, for people who, for a certain kind of person, it is absolutely sustaining on the level of life force, on the level of mental health, on the level of inspiration and energy and fulfillment. And it really sort of struck me as I was having that conversation, because that conversation came along around about the time that I also started reading The Gift by Lewis Hyde. And one of his, he makes a very kind of explicit distinction between the component of a creative work, or the component of the creative process that is a gift, and the component of the creative process that is a commodity. In other words, something that operates within the kind of the market. It's either traded or sold. And he makes a case that in order for something to be a work of art, in order for a process to be genuinely artistic, it has to have a gift component. It does not have to have a commodity component. Art can exist without the market, but art cannot exist without the gift. So in other words, making a living off of our creative work is optional. It's nice if that can happen, but there are costs to that happening. There are pros and cons to being able to sustain ourselves from our creative work. It doesn't have to happen. And there are pros and cons to doing art that does not sustain us financially in any way. And this is something that's interesting for me, because I've had a complex in the past that if I wasn't making my living, if I wasn't making some kind of remuneration for the creative work I did, then I didn't feel like it was legitimate. And according to Lewis Hyde, I had it exactly backwards. I had it exactly backward. I was using exactly the wrong yardstick to judge whether the work I was doing was of value and was indeed art at all, because I was trying to use a financial yardstick to measure that. And what he was saying is, that's the part of the commodity part of the creative product or process is the part that you can kind of take it or leave it. You can have it or you cannot. But you don't want it to be so consuming of the process, or such a big component of the process, that you lose sight of the gift component, because in fact that's when it's not legitimate. That's when it's no longer, it can become no longer art, or the art can be at the very least cheapened, and in many ways sort of like destroyed, sort of undermined by commodification. So I realize I've sort of like I'm riffing a little bit now on the conversation I had tonight, but I found myself I have just found myself so nourished by being in a creative process, and by having something that I cared about. I didn't have a deadline. I mean, I did have a deadline for the initial writing, but I didn't have a deadline for this. But I also, there's a kind of a window of opportunity during which this was going to still kind of land within the cushion of a certain kind of emotional place for those of us who knew Alan. And I have to say, I sent it out to my family today, and it was just, there was a weird, and I just wrote a little email kind of talking about how I, talking about the event of the memorial, and then talking a little bit about how this piece came to me, what prompted it to come through. And actually, like, pushing send on that email was kind of emotional. I was not expecting it, because writing the song was emotional, and there were many moments where I felt like I was truly communing with Alan, and certainly, really spending hours on end invested and just connected to his spirit, to my memory of him, to what I feel like is still a lived connection to him. But also sharing it with my family was kind of a big moment. I found myself getting emotional as I was about to push send, and I tried not to make my email be too emotional. I tried not to, tee it up too high, and to sort of really just share it as something that had come through for me as part of Alan's passing. But it was actually very moving to put it out there. And I think I'll let a day or two go by, but then I want another one of these projects. Nobody needs to die. I'm going to write songs about people who are alive. But I'm just saying, this has been a great opportunity, and it's been a reminder. I really sort of feel like Alan gave me a parting gift of saying, Robin, wake up, do this, don't stop doing this, do this, like, just like little. A little nudge. So yeah, that's where I am today. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.